Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Rules of Engagement. As always, I'll be your host, Nick axslav ranish, as we explore strategies and tactics used in the game of Starcraft 2. Today, we're going to take a look at the Thorzain vs. Creator match from Tuesday from the MLG Winter Exhibition Tournament. This as a quarterfinal match, And of course, if you want to catch those games in full, the VODs are at youtube.com/official MLGSC2. That series went all 5 games. We're going to take a look at 3 of those games today. We're going to start off analyzing game number 1. Then we're going to take a look at game number 2, and then we're going to take a look at game number 4. Those are the 3 games I have a lot of points I want to make out in those games. Then, of course, after that, it's going to be the viewer Q&A. So submit me any questions you want me to answer during the Q&A. Twitter is at axslav. Just tweet them all to me. I'll answer them. But now let's jump into analyzing game number 1, Thorzain vs. Creator. This game was in Cloud Kingdom. Pretty awesome game. A couple things I want to talk about are, 1, the military concept of indirect approach. Then I want to jump into some other mid-game stuff, and then we're going to talk about late-game engagements and how to engage late-game as Terran and how to engage late-game as Protoss. So we're going to jump into this game starting at the 13-minute mark. And the first thing I want to talk about is indirect approach. So the idea of indirect approach is, let's just look at this from Thorzain's point of view, because he's the one who's on the offense, right? What an indirect approach is, and we'll play this forward a little bit, is when you have a target that you want, right? Let's say Thorzain with these units that are right here, he wants to attack the main base. Now, let's say he just straight up runs his medevacs across the top to the main base. Now, if there's an observer in this area for Creator, which in fact they're probably, there's one down there, so there's not. Often there is. As soon as they see the medevacs going towards the main base, they'll react to defend, and they'll block you. If you threaten a different target, so if these medevacs went down here and threatened this base, Creator would have to make sure he has troops here, and then if you use the medevac speed to jump into the main base very quickly, he'll be less prepared because he thinks you're attacking the other location. So the straightest line to a base is not always the fastest one. Sometimes you want to fake and then go up and over so that they have to defend other locations, and it'll make your true target more vulnerable when they spread out. So coming forward like this, right? Thorzain now all of a sudden has several different unit choices here he can attack with. Right now, he's got the drops over here, and he's got the drops starting on the left side. Now, this is a pretty cool situation right here because he has so many potential targets he can attack. And let's actually jump into the pen software and look at where some of his units are. So Thorzain right now, there's 3 targets, right? His 3 targets are going to be 1, 2, and 3. So he wants to attack one of those 3 bases. He doesn't care too much which one it is. Where are his forces? He has forces right here, and he has forces right here. And out of these forces, they can all attack any of these locations very easily because of medevacs, right? He can attack this location, he can attack this location, he can team up here. And what's really awesome, what he can do that's super awesome, is he can pretend to do these moves, but really, he could both join up and attack straight into the main via that route and land his whole army in the main. So he has a lot of different attack angles. And what's awesome here is this refers to actually something Sun Tzu talks about, is that he says that when the goal of basically, if you want to be able to attack your opponent when they're vulnerable, right? What you want to do is you want to discover where your enemy is, right? So Thorzain's pretty sure, knowing that Creator is world-class Protoss, he has troops defending his bases. Then the next step is to make yourself invisible. So if you look at Thorzain's point of view, what he wants to do is make sure there's no scouting on his armies. Make sure he kills the observers. If you look at this from Creator's point of view, he hasn't done that job that well, right? There's still an observer here he hasn't killed. Creator has his watchtower for some reason. There's an observer here and there's an observer here. So he hasn't done that second part. But if he was able to do that, to kill all these observers and restrict Creator's vision to just basically where his army is, then what he can do is he can concentrate his forces. So then, let's say he did that. Let's say Creator's vision, all of a sudden Creator's vision, let me bring this guy back up. If he gets to the point where Creator's vision is weak, right? He can bring it down to the point, let's say Creator can only see this zone right here, right? Then he can't see all this stuff right here. He can't see the fact that Thorzain is bringing his army together. So Creator keeps his army spread out. If you kill observers, you can bring your army together, and then you can concentrate your force and attack when your opponent's divided. He can hit straight into the main. And most likely, in a situation like this, Creator's going to have a couple units in the top left of his main, but the very middle part of his main is going to be very vulnerable. In fact, I don't actually know because I forget exactly his layout, but I'm willing to bet he's going to have units to defend the drop here. He's going to defend his third from the potential front attack. He's going to have units to defend the top left. But this location, 4 locations, is very hard to defend. So if you can, right now, Creator doesn't need to defend it because he has this observer here and he has the watchtower. If Thorzain can first take those out, then all of a sudden he can do a massive jump and just sprint right into main down the middle. And there's so many different ways you can attack. But the bottom line is you need to basically know where your opponent is. The factory helps with that, and also the fact that Thorzain knows Creator's somewhere in this tri-base area. And then you need to make sure you're invisible. So right now, these attacks, they look kind of cool. He's got him with the watchtower, but Creator still knows everything, right? Because he's got all these observers here. In fact, he's got 4 observers down the map, giving him basically perfect vision. So if you're a Terran player, you want to put on aggression. You want to utilize the fact that you're faster. You got multiple targets to attack. Your opponent has to spread around, and you can concentrate your forces. Very, very important to kill the observers. Exceptionally important. So that's like very, very. If you want to be aggressive with Terran, you have to do that. Of course, Thorzain, he's happy not doing damage. Maybe he could do damage, maybe he can't, but he's pretty much happy just taking a late game because that's what he does. So now, the next thing I want to talk about is, as this game goes on, we're just going to fast forward it just a bit to get some interesting parts. We're going to bring it back to everyone's view. Thorzain keeps poking and prodding. He's not really getting too much done, but Creator's staying on the defensive. Creator, of course, is getting very good upgrades. He's working on his 3rd armor. Thorzain's 2-2. So Thorzain's getting good upgrades this game as well, actually. He's staying pretty much neck and neck with Creator because Creator only went single forge to make sure he can take the 3rd faster and have a decent army. So as Creator is moving out here, we're at this point where both players are approaching max armies, right? And if you look at the army composition, the one thing about Thorzain is he has a lot of Marines, right? And they're not great units late game, but they're actually not bad. But Creator has a ton of Zealots. And one thing you want to do is you have 34 Zealots. Your Protoss 200 food army is not going to be that great. It's similar to if you're a Zerg and you have 34 Roaches. Your 200 food army is not going to be that great. If he lets Thorzain sit around for too long and build up a few more ghosts, maybe trade off some Marines, all of a sudden his army is going to be very weak. So what Creator wants to do here is he wants to say, okay, I have more economy than my opponent once his 4th base gets up. We're roughly equal in most aspects of the game. But if I sit around for too long, my army is going to be weak in the late game because I only have 4 High Templar, only have 2 Colossi. I have a whole bunch of Zealots. I'm 195 food. I can't get much more. Thorzain, of course, can keep adding more ghosts and improve his army. In fact, he's already got 3 more in production. So as the game goes on, it's going to get worse and worse for Creator unless he can find a way. Fast forward. Get back to that section. Unless he can find a way to make something great happen. So, I'm going to jump back here. So what he wants to do is he wants to find a way to trade off his Zealots. Right, so going forward, he says, okay, I need to trade off some Zealots. One of the best ways to trade off Zealots is in a straight engagement, if you're not going to trade too poorly. The reason why that's a great way to trade off Zealots is because, unlike other units, right, let's say you have Marines. You can drop Marines behind the middle line, do a lot of damage. You can, with Zerg, you can do speeding run-bys, roach run-bys. Zealots can be good for run-bys, but in general they're slightly worse because your opponent can make walls to block them a little bit easier. I guess it's similar to speedings, but they're not quite as fast as speedings. They also do less damage per cost than per supply than speedings. What their strength is having a lot of life. And having a lot of life isn't as good for drop play and harassment because if your opponent responds, they're going to take out your force anyway. It's more about doing a lot of damage. So Zealots aren't quite as good for that, so the ideal way to trade off Zealots is in a direct engagement. And as we can see here, that's what Creator is trying to say. He's like, it's 1630. My opponent's going to be taking a 4th base. I'm just going to walk in here. He has to find an open to take a 4th base. And my Zealot army is just going to smack him in the face, right? And I might not win this battle, but in an open field, at least I'll trade decently with the 3 armor Zealots. At this point in the game, then I can replace them with, of course, more High Templar, more Colossi, etc. Better, more powerful units to make a better max army. But Thorzain doesn't have a 4th base, right? He's staying on 3 bases. And so Creator is looking for that engagement. He decides to come up here. And this is kind of a mistake, right? Because this angle is not really that great. So unfortunately, Thorzain has such a... I mean, Thorzain isn't really actually positioned, ideally. But he's still positioned okay. Yes, the Storms can zone him out, but he got 1 really good EMP, and that's all it took. And all of a sudden, he's getting a really great trade here. The Vikings taking out Observers and the 2 Colossi. Templar out of energy. And now Creator can find open, but he's already lost the Colossi. His Zealots are kind of, he's trying to get spread out, but a couple of them already died before he can get that good angle. And it's basically not the ideal trade. It still isn't, I mean, it's pretty bad. It's not the end of the world because he won the trade anyway, but he really wanted to get a much better trade than he did. As it is here, we can see the foods on both sides. Thorzain's producing basically as fast as he's losing units. Creator is just getting totally rocked here. So what could Creator have done instead back when he was at this situation here? Well, let's actually come back here. And let's think about a couple things. So Creator all of a sudden was in this position where Creator had his army. We use red again because it's the best color. Creator had his army right here. And he ended up going here, and he got kind of crushed because there was a very strong Terran army there. But he wanted to trade away Zealots. He can't sit around and do nothing. So ideally, the best way to trade Zealots, I think, you keep your Mothership Core with your army. And your main army, you actually circle around back here. Right? And this is the Mothership Core. And then your other army, you send you send about 10 to 15 Zealots. So a good chunk, you can't be with Rally. Those units come up here, right? And odds are a Terran is going to have a very hard time splitting the army up perfectly. Your 15 Zealots will trade decently over here. If your 15 Zealots don't trade decently, it's because their whole army went back, and that's when you can strike in here and knock out their expansion. And the reason why you really want to knock out that expansion is, of course, because you had the Mothership Core, right? So yes, you're stuck in the corner here, but you can recall out. Very, very important to have the ability to recall out. So you can distract with 15 Zealots. If the Zealots trade badly, it's almost for sure because your opponent sent too many units back. It allows you to come in there, force a lift, kill some SCVs, kill a bunch of depots. In fact, if we get back in the game, we can see there was a collection of depots here, right? So you can attack in here, do a lot of damage. The 15 Zealots over here, they'll either do a lot of damage, and your opponent stays here, in which case you don't attack. You keep your army here. Eventually, those Zealots get cleaned up, and you've successfully traded away pretty much all the Zealots you want to trade away. 15 is a good number. You have 30 food now to replace with High Templar and Colossi. If their whole army comes back and slaughters this, then you can come in here, and yes, you may get stuck in the bottom right and killed, but you've got that recall. Just make sure your Mothership Core stays back so it can't be EMP'd. So sometimes, even though Zealots aren't great for harassment, it's better than charging up a tough ramp like this. So going forward, Creator took a bad fight there, but again, he's got a 4th base. That's pretty much the only damage he's taken all game. It's not going to end the game. It's going to put Thorzain ahead. And often, I talk a lot about how to play from ahead and how to make sure you turn an ahead game into a 1 game, right? And always the key to do that, if you're ahead in the game, to turn into a 1 game, you use your leverage to basically get at least the base up on your opponent. So Thorzain got an army advantage there. He should be taking the 4th base. He's kind of building command centers a little conservative. It would be nicer to put one there, but it's not a big deal that they fly. At the same time, he should deny his opponent's 4th base. So that's exactly what he's going to do. He wants to get ahead. He's going to try to get more ahead. The one thing that's a little bit scary about here is he doesn't want to come down the ramp. If he goes too far down the ramp, look at this Templar spread, right? This is something about late game TVP engagement. So as a Terran player, you need space to kite backwards, right? In fact, I'm going to bring this guy back up again. So right now, he has so much space to kite backward. It's all open behind him. If his army moves down and to occupy this location right here, he has very little space to kite backwards. In fact, he has to pretty much go straight back, right? He can't spread out as he kites. He only has one direction, and it's basically his army has to stay clumped as it goes backwards, which means if a storm lands like right here, he's basically dead, right? That one storm will totally wipe him out, and he's done for. So he doesn't want to get on the low ground, right? The Protoss player, right? If we're talking about what the Protoss player wants to do. What the Protoss player wants to do is they want either to pin the Terran in a corner where they can't kite, the Zealots, Archons, Colossi, High Templar can do what they want to do. Or, also, additionally, they also want to try to get as many angles to engage with Templar as possible. So, right now he only has 4 Templar, and they're not spread quite ideally. He'd like to probably have one a little bit down here. But he still has, if you still think about it, where the EMPs would hit, there's really not going to hit a lot of Templar at once, right? He still has these 2 backup ones that can come in. And he's got this guy here with a lot of energy in the front who can, if the ghosts aren't in the front, he can do some good damage. So, either way, it's not a great idea for Thorzain to charge down there. But Thorzain is ahead. He wants to leverage his advantage on the 4th. What's the best way to do that? Best way is to camp up the high ground right here. The disadvantage is maybe your opponent can set up a flank, right? If you camp the high ground, what you do is you leave one scouting unit back here. When they try to come in there to flank, if they send a small unit up there and the rest of their army goes up here, you can scan here. If you see too many units here, you turn around and just jump the small army really fast. So you want to take the high ground. If your opponent charges up, that's fine. You just need to kite backwards from the storms, and you're going to trade well, right? And again, Thorzain trades well there. But he can't charge on the low ground, especially not when we lost a bunch of ghosts here. So charging on the low ground is very, very dangerous. We can see he's scared of that now. He was hoping he could get a game win if he was able to knock out these two Templar. He could have then pushed forward and won the game. But because he lost all the ghosts, wasn't able to finish off both the Templar, he's got to be very careful going on the low ground, especially against that many Archons. Even though he's EMP'd and there's still Zealots in front, they're still doing a good amount of damage. And in these straight-on frontal engagements, it's very hard for him to get something done. He has to play cat and mouse. Meanwhile, Creator is still mining from that 4th base. And he's going to end up retreating. So wasn't able to deny the 4th base like he could have from the top. Of course, he couldn't have killed the actual Nexus until he goes and lands units behind there, but it still would have been nice to deny the mining. Either way, he's got to back up, get more ghosts, and go for another late game engagement. Now they're both on 4 base versus 4 base. He's kind of caught up to Creator in the base count, and it's not actually looking too bad. Of course, Creator's going to go ahead and take a 5th base because that's smart. You against a player like Thorzain, it's going to make a lot of ghosts. Ideally, you try to get ahead of a base against a Terran opponent because you need a lot of gas to replace your Templar losses. This is a base that can be harassed by drop play, but again, Creator has these scouting things on the left side, and Thorzain typically avoids late game drop play, so it's great to take those corner bases against him into late game. So now going forward, Thorzain's like, okay, first we're gonna try to do some drops. Oh, Zealots see that, so he is actually going to utilize that and try to harass that 3rd base. And now we're another late game engagement. So remember, who does this late game engagement favor? Well, on one case, it seems like it kind of favors Thorzain. He's got more units here, right? He's got more total units, at least until Creator's a little bit more spread out than he wants to be because Creator wasn't ready for the attack. But it's also about positioning. So as we come into this, as a Terran player, it's always important, where can you kite? Can you spread out as you kite backwards? So from this situation, right, there's Zealots here, there's Army here. It's tough because it's hard to get down to ramp. Once you get down to ramp, then you can kite well, but your opponent won't chase you. You'll kind of lose this sim. The other option is to go up and to the left. That's a decent space, but you'll get stuck by these walls. But you can kill these guys, and then with this many medevacs, actually, you go up to the left and pick up and get out. So that's exactly what Thorzain's going to do. He's going to go up to the left. He's going to trade really well until he runs out of space to kite, right? So right now he traded really well. He killed a bunch of Zealots, lost almost nothing. He's kiting backwards. Archon's getting very few hits off, right? Kiting backwards, turns around, kills 1 Archon. But now the Templar are catching up. The Archons are more of them are be able to get to the front. He's running out of space to engage. So right now is where he needs to back up 1 more step, and he needs to load up and get out of there because he has so many expensive ghosts here. He's got 6 ghosts. That's 2,000 resources units right here. So right now, resources lost tab slightly disadvantageous to Hero. But going forward here, even if Thorzain can win this battle, storms like that are going to devastate it. That was kind of a bad warp in. And also make it a situation where Thorzain starts pushing forward, but then the ghosts are all out of energy. So now he's got to retreat again, right? He gained a little bit of value there because the Zealot warp-in wasn't in the right spot to trap the ghosts. So he's still doing good, but ideally he would have escaped there without having to lose some of those very, very precious ghosts. Although he's already rebuilt a 13, so I guess he's totally fine doing that. Apologies there. Going forward again, we're going to take a look at 1 more of these late game engagements. And that's, again, analyzing it from the same position. Remember, Thorzain there, he jumped a small army and then had space to kite for a little while. Then when he couldn't, he ate a couple big storms. In this situation, again, going forward, Creator, this isn't really going to be a fight. They're both kind of scared to engage here. Going forward here, of course, Thorzain again. See how he wants to make sure he has space to back up and spread out. If he's right here, as he backs up, he won't be able to spread out very well. He'll have to back up in 1 direction, which lets the Protoss know where to land those storms. And of course, the Protoss is trying to spread out to get multiple engagement angles. Terrans generally don't do that. As a Terran, you want to keep your army, you want to spread your ghosts out, but the bulk of your army wants to be together, so it's easier to kite, easier to keep track of what's the danger zone of what's going to be stormed. So your ghosts, you typically want to spread out. The rest of your army, you want to ball up. And now Thorzain's going to go for this top left. And this is, right now he's in a good position, right? He's got a larger bank than his opponent. They're both on 5 bases, but of course he's gonna have better economy because of the mules. Though right now he doesn't have any landed. But any second he can turbo boost a bunch of mules, or just use scans to kill observers. Either way. And if you look at the army size, Thorzain's ahead in army size significantly as well. But remember, his army size is all in ghosts. And if ghosts can't, if the ghosts get backed against the corner, they get hit by storm. If he can't kite very well with the keeping away from the powerful colossi, he's going to be in trouble. So he's doing good here, but this is a very tight corner that's very, very hard to back away from. The good side is Zealots can't get a great surround. The bad side is, against this type of army, Zealots will never get a great surround because they'll die too fast anyway, right? So you're not worried about the Zealots around here. What you're worried about is being able to kite away from colossi and from storms. So as he comes in here, he has the Cloak Ghost, which is great because, of course, he's killed the observers, so they can't see the ghosts. But it's still all about the storms, and if you have a stuck in a spot where you can't kite backwards, those storms can really do a ton of damage to you. And then eventually your Marines get low, and without the Marine support, even if they can't see the ghosts, they're going to trade well against them because you don't have enough damage output to knock out that Protoss army. As we can see here, very expensive ghosts all go down because they lost that support to the Great Storms. So we're just going to fast forward a bit to the very last engagement. This, of course, was a great game. I encourage you guys to check out youtube.com/official MLGSC2 to catch all these replays. It was a really great series. Of course, the game goes on. A nice little harass here by both sides. Thorzain deflects it. Again, you can see Creator is establishing multiple attack angles if Thorzain wants to try to go up this ramp. Thorzain, of course, is going to try to take one of these middle side bases. And that's when, again, he's going to use the sensor tower to help him keep track of Creator. So if Creator doesn't maintain the spread, Thorzain can go up and do damage. Nice little harass attempt by Creator, trying to trade off some of the less valuable units. And coming in here is where it really comes down to the very last engagement. Both players have a ton of money, but both armies are very expensive. If one player gets their army wiped out, they're going to lose badly. So as the engagement happens, the key things you want to do here as a Protoss is, 1, make sure you storm the Vikings. If you have a lot of Colossi, he's got 7 Colossi, you can beat the army without storming the Bile. But you got to storm the Vikings so your Colossi stay alive. That's primary thing for Protoss. Keep the Templar further in the back so it can't be impeded, and that way they can storm the Vikings. For Terran, you want to have at least a couple ghosts in front, at least a couple ghosts back left here, and at least a couple ghosts back right. You do not want to have all your ghosts in one section, because if you do, the bad thing that happens is all of a sudden those ghosts get isolated, and this section of insanely 10 ghosts gets demolished by a storm and 2 Colossi. And losing all those ghosts means that the rest of your army, the Bio army, gets stuck. And the Bio army without ghost support, of course, is going to just die to a single storm, single Colossi. As soon as the Vikings are down, Colossi can mop up the rest, and that sense pretty much ends the game there. So I know that was a little bit longer game. Next one is going to be a little bit shorter, but it was an awesome game. A lot of cool things. A couple things to remember. If you're a Terran player, if you can deny your opponent the observers, scan and kill them, then what you can do is, while they're spread out to cover their bases, you quickly consolidate and strike one of the bases with overwhelming force. In the mid-game, while you want to trade your Zealots away, if your opponent has a good position, try sending them in multiple paths to do some harassment instead of charging up the choke. In the late-game PvP engagements, Terran, always make sure you can retreat so your units don't get pinned against walls. As a Protoss, always make sure you try to hit from multiple angles and you spread your units out as much as possible prior to the engagement. This wraps up analysis of game number 1 of Creator versus Thorzain. We'll take a short break and be on to game number 2.